Flat Earther challenge and never accepted. This is one of those things where people either have to go find someone to give them the expert opinion on how to BS their way past this, or they're kind of stuck. This is called the Flat Earth Pole Star Conundrum. And a flat Earth, if you're going to claim that the entire Earth is either rotating in one direction for some reason instead of the fixed version, or it's a fixed version, and the sun and moon, everything goes in the same direction, just slightly different rates, and some of them even say they don't move reference to each other even though you can see it. One of the weird things that they'll also claim is it has to move the same clockwise or counterclockwise rotation no matter where you are looking at it. So when you go to the equator and see things going up and over east to west, or what, I get them backwards, sorry about that. And if you look to your right, it's rotating one way, and you look to the left, it's rotating the other, which is what it would have to be, if it's going up and over. And then the further north you go, or south you go, the more you see a center point where it's rotating at. That can't happen if it's all one fixed thing moving over a flat disk, because that shows you that there's a curvature to the Earth. We see, let's say, counterclockwise star trails and photos taken pointing towards, let's say, the north. I'm getting backwards all the time because I literally just get this backwards. I'm an idiot, sorry. Heck, this video is reversed. This is actually my right hand. I have to flip the image. No, I'm not kidding. Anyway, and we see the other way around, circular star trails in photos taken pointing towards the south. But on any hypothetical flat Earth model of any kind, none of that could be possible unless you create a really creative projection idea. The trouble is that at the equator, you would see a shearing because they'd be going in the opposite direction. They don't do that. They all go the same direction, which implies that when you're further south, you're on a bottom of a sphere. So what is the answer? The people I've seen trying to respond to this will deflect with the previous video I did about 50 lunar eclipses while the sun and moon are visible in the sky, and hundreds of other goalpost moving behaviors, because somehow that works for them. The idea here is what that shows when they do that, when you see that, they'll either refuse to respond to you, which means they do not know how they can exist, and this is called falsifiability. If your hypothesis or your theory, if your hypothetical flat Earth model works a certain way, this means that it can't be a flat Earth. That's it. And they'll come up with a ridiculously complicated group of ideas, including you're looking at a giant mirror that's been placed there to fool you, which wouldn't work again, because how would that work on a flat surface? No, I mean literally, how would that work on a flat surface? To being a projection, which means they're really making a convoluted universe up. To literally, like I mentioned, they will just bring up some other subject. The reason for this is the same reason when anybody who calls himself a truther or an alternative news source or whatever is confronted with facts that disprove what they said, when you can falsify their hypothesis, they desperately cling to anything else to talk about. They'll, like in the book, Animal Farm, screaming at the top of your lungs, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. That's where the expression sheeple comes from, by the way. They demonstrate this behavior. So here's a request. If someone has an actual explanation that doesn't require that you just ignore reality and just say, because I said so, it has to be a real reasoning for it. Now, the closest you'll find to doing this, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up a long time ago and just gave up trying to do it, Lord Stephen Christ and other people who propose a concave Earth say that the Earth is round, it's just inside out. Now, it's not really a good explanation, because it doesn't cover everything else either. But at least they acknowledge the Earth would have to be round under those conditions. And in that example, they literally create just as convoluted a universe, but at least it's a spherical object in some way, so that you could actually have this kind of work. And I like one person's review of the concave idea, is you can kind of make it work, but it would imply the universe is extremely warped, and that would fit a collapsing universe model over a very long period of time, maybe. But having the Earth somehow be special and have the entire universe wrapped within it doesn't make any sense. But then again, maybe that's perspective from every point in the universe in a collapsing universe. It was an interesting hypothesis and stuff. I was hoping Stephen Christ would come up with something like that, but he never did. He just basically trolls and acknowledges that he's trolling, or he did at one time. Anyway, in this case, it's one of those things where people will just, do the bah and then run away and not comment. So I'm going to see what happens when I post this, because most flat earthers are aware of this and know that this is really, really a problem. And the usual complaint is, like I said, they'll just come up with something else, or they'll claim you're actually looking at the North Star. And of course, when the star patterns don't match and the constellations don't match, they get really desperate sounding noises coming out of them, because then they start trying to prove that Orion's belt is a completely different star pattern. It gets really weird. These are literally people who cannot acknowledge, that can't work in a flat Earth. Any kind of model for it. And a lot of the other, yes, there's more than one flat Earth model. And one person even decided to say, well, it's still flat, but it's shaped. It fools you into thinking it's shaped around, and that's it. And that was the entire explanation. Another one is that it's a disc. I saw one recently. Look up flat Earth disco ball and just play some music while this person's babbling about it. And there's a lot of videos like that where they're just, space aliens. They just come up with something, and it's rather sad. But anyway, and this goes to my assertion that either people are doing this because they're just doing self-deceiving trolling kind of things, or they honestly know that it's BS and they're just trolling, or they can't think outside of their box they've created. I don't know. Now, someone can point me to a link to someone trying to explain this who doesn't go on and on and on and on for hours and hours like me. But someone better than me that explains this quickly and explains why this isn't a problem and gives a reasonable explanation. Right? I can sit here and explain how an H-bomb works, an atom bomb, or a nuclear reactor works in a way that's accurate, but it's not precise, and it leaves out a lot of stuff, but it'll give you a gist of it. I can explain how electricity works in a chemical battery, a capacitor. I can explain these things. Someone has to be able to explain this sort of thing without having you just say you accept it. And I'm going to quote one of the most nasty assertions I've ever heard. Just fake it till you believe it. If you have ever been presented with the idea that you just have to have faith to believe these things, that's why science exists. Science doesn't require faith. Science requires proof. And there's many things in science that we don't actually have any proof for. We don't know. There's about a half a dozen things we don't know yet. The rest of it's been figured out. And I'm making an assertion I've made before. Contrarian behavior and denialism is based on being angry about the world being solved. There's nothing left to solve. We've explored everything. We can still find mysteries and stuff, but you can't claim that the Earth isn't a round object in space, because we've actually demonstrated this. And it was demonstrated 300 years before the birth of Christ. You really, really, really have to really be trying to undo everything. This is like people looking at, the first draft of the Constitution and deciding that has to be the only law of the land. It's not. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.